Good afternoon, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be here with Uğur, Şahin and Özlem Türeci. I've had the privilege of meeting Özlem and Uğur several times, and I have to say I've been completely blown away by how modest and unassuming they are. So if you don't mind, or if they don't mind, I'd like to open by boasting about them, because they won't. So Özlem and Uğur invented the mRNA vaccine against COVID-19. They did it in just over 10 months. It gets better. They did it in just over 10 months at lightning speed, pivoting away from their investigations into cancer. The vaccine has worked on a mass scale, and it's safe. It has saved, they have saved, so many lives, including probably some people in this room. They're part of the reason we're able to get together at all. Their company, BioNTech, now employs thousands of people. They've made billions, but still travel by bike and stay at Airbnbs in Paddington. They've won countless awards, are a beautiful Turkish and German success story, and they've even stayed married to each other. Can we have another round of applause for Özlem and Uğur? So, Uğur, take us back. At the end of January 2020, you realised very quickly that what was happening in Wuhan was very serious. You even predicted a global lockdown at that point in January. In your book, you talk about how you called an urgent meeting at that point with colleagues saying, a pattern never lies. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was in January 2020, and at that time point, it was clear that there is an outbreak in China. And this was nothing concerning at the beginning, because this happens worldwide every year. There are outbreaks somewhere. But then I read a paper coming out in Lancet on January 24, which described a family who was traveling and they got infected. And in this publication, it became clear that there is a pattern with human-to-human transmission. This is one factor. It's a completely new virus, so that means the human population is not immune against that. The pathogen is similar to something which caused almost 18 years ago a similar outbreak, which was controlled in the last minute. And the third piece of this pattern was it was obvious that this could be transmitted by asymptomatic people. And this is a combined pattern which makes it extremely difficult to keep an outbreak local. I did some calculations, and at that time point it was clear that this is already a global outbreak, yeah? and we will face a global pandemic.
I mean, politicians weren't behaving like that in January 2020. But tell us, you got to work, Özlem. How was the pressure? What was it like? What did you do?
It was a situation in which we had to sort of act in a military organized style. Uğur read this paper and then was sure this would be a pandemic and started at the very weekend to design the vaccine constructs. And we brought our team together on Monday then, after this weekend, and designed sort of the first phase of Project Lightspeed. Lightspeed because it was clear time would matter, and it was a very well-organized and coordinated, stepwise sort of project which we started.
And it happened. 10 months. I think the previous fastest modern record for a vaccine was 5 years, but you did it in 10 months. Tell us about that moment. So it was 8th of November 2020. For context, we can all remember where we were because Trump had just lost the US election less than a week before. Tell us about the moment you heard that the vaccine was more than 90% effective. Tell us about that moment.
Yes, that's a moment we both, I think, will not forget. It was a Sunday, and starting January to that day, it was basically a breathless sort of race for our entire team, and there was not a moment where we could just sit down or do something else. We had to go through the preclinical lab stage of vaccine development and through the different clinical stages where participants in clinical trials were immunized. And now we were at the end of what is called phase 3, so a large worldwide clinical trial with 45,000 participants, randomized where vaccine versus placebo was compared. And on that Sunday, there would be the readout. And there was no way to read any signs before in order to understand would this work or not. So it was a very difficult day. There was nothing to do because we had done everything we could. And we tried to sort of distract ourselves. I started to do something which I had not almost done the entire 10 months, laundry, right? And Uğur cleaned up the house, and he realized that I was close to crying because we did not know what would come out. And a negative result would have mean that the world would stay in lockdown, and one of the few parties who had a vaccine would not be able to deliver. And it would also mean for our company, because we had invested at risk, and also for us personally, for our family, it would had been an existential hit. And so we waited until night when the data came out, and our friend Albert Bourla, the Pfizer CEO, who got the news first because Pfizer was conducting the trial on our behalf, called us and asked Uğur whether he would want to know the result. And Uğur tried to joke with cracking voice said, no, actually not. It's fine. Yeah, and
it's fine. There's more laundry to do.
Yeah. And then we heard the result that it was not only an efficacious vaccine, but 90% efficacious, which is quite unprecedented for vaccines, and that was a huge relief.
It's a good day.
Yeah, fantastic.
So where are we now with COVID? How do you see where things are at? It obviously behaves very differently from seasonal flu or other infectious diseases that we're familiar with.
Yes, we are in the what we name as a new normal time. So we have now a pathogen which is continuously mutating, and which is present. And during the winter time, of course, we have this higher incidence rate, but the virus never disappears. What we are seeing is that there are multiple different variants and undergoing evolution. So this is always happening if the immune system of the host is reacting and putting pressure to the virus sequences. The virus starts to mutate, and we are now dealing with dozens, hundreds of variants. Yeah? And what is the best way to deal with that is to generate adapted vaccines. Yeah? So the community, the scientific community, and the regulators decided to have a seasonal vaccine, like in the flu season, because the winter is still the highest rate of infections. So we are now in the coming into the third year of a seasonal vaccine with an adapted variant, which matches as close as possible to the currently running variant. And the idea is to reduce the rate of severe infections, yeah, and thereby reduce the overall mortality.
What do you worry about with COVID? What is there still to worry about?
We still do not know whether at some point more aggressive variants would show up, which evade the immune response we have built as a sort of human community now over time by getting infected, by getting vaccines, and so on. So that's sort of a question mark which could happen any time. We are not anymore at the place where we were at the initial outbreak, because there is some immunity in the human population. We are not entirely unprotected, but there are still deaths due to COVID-19, and our vulnerable populations, our older citizens, sick or immune deficient people are still at risk.
And there's challenges getting the vaccine into poor countries as well.
Yes, there are challenges, and they were in particular challenging at the time where the vaccines came out and were approved as initial approvals, because also the capacities to produce vaccines were still in the build-up, and this was one of the challenges. And the other challenges was the other challenge was that there were and still are no mechanisms in place to ensure, even in a pandemic situation, equality of distribution. We as innovators and vaccine developers did not know that, I have to admit. We were naive and thought it's our job to develop a vaccine and provide it, and there will be mechanisms of equal distribution, which was not the case. And you might remember there was a lot of discussion about that. So our initial reaction was that we, via the COVAX mechanism, provided 40% of our 2021 production at cost to low and middle income countries, and faced the situation that there was even more vaccine hesitancy than we saw in Europe or in the US, which is understandable, because there was a question mark why all of a sudden this vaccine is provided. And the way we reacted to that was that we decided we need to enable those regions which are vulnerable to produce their own vaccines for their own regions, which started as a science fiction-y idea. So how can you provide a production facility, which you can build, for example, in Africa, a concept which we called BioNTech, which is basically shipping containers in which you construct a miniaturized version of an mRNA production company, facility, which you certify and equip and test run at our headquarters at the same quality we use for worldwide vaccine production, and then ship to the country of choice. The first one is installed in Kigali, and help to build an environment, an ecosystem where in these regions, when people are trained to produce the vaccine themselves, right? So this is a start, and we think this is a way to face the next pandemic in a better prepared way, also for low and middle income countries.
So before January 2020, I mean, you're both oncologists, and before January 2020, you were focused on work on finding a cancer vaccine, and I know you've now reverted to that. What's your work about, and how did the COVID vaccine change it?
Yeah, we are working on cancer immunotherapies now 30 years, right?
More than 30 years,
more than
yes.
30 years, yes. And the overall idea is that cancer is really a different beast. So it's when we are talking about cancer immunotherapy, we are not talking about preventing cancer, but we are talking about fighting existing cancer. And the scientific challenge is that every cancer is different. So if you compare two patients with lung cancer and compare their tumors, the molecular overlap is less than 5%. Yeah? And even within one patient, there's a heterogeneity. That means if you really compare two tumor cells, they are not matching each other. So there is these two fundamental problems which are called inter-individual variability. Every cancer is different, and intratumoral heterogeneity. That means within a tumor, everything is different. And this is, according to our understanding, the root cause of cancer treatment failure. And our vision is to use the newest technologies, and we developed the mRNA technology for that, to personalize, individualize cancer treatment. So that means get the tumor of the patient, analyze all the genetics, changes, the mutations, and then make a vaccine, a therapeutic vaccine, individually for the patient. And when we started, this was really a science fiction, and as scientists.
Everything starts off as science fiction.
Yeah, as scientists, we didn't talk about that. We talked about we are developing mRNA vaccines, but this was our aim. And when we started, the sequencing of a tumor would take 20 years, so there's no chance to get a vaccine within the normal time. Today, the sequencing of a tumor takes a day or less than a day. Yeah? So that means technology is evolving, and we started in trusting that technology is evolving. We developed a vaccine technology that could be produced within a few weeks. Yeah? So this is the idea, to get the tumor of the patient, to do the sequencing, and make the vaccine within a few weeks and ship it. Yeah? And we are now with this technology in late stage development. We have done early clinical trials. We have proven that the concept in principle works scientifically, that we are able to do that in different types of cancer, pancreatic cancer, melanoma, different types of...
They're the main ones it's been effective for, pancreatic and melanoma.
Yes, and this is not yet an approved technology, but we have now clinical trials running, and we'll see in the next few years if these trials are positive. And if they are positive, then we might be able to approve that. And that would mean that with this technology, and this is the idea, the vision, that everyone who has cancer could be eligible for a personalized treatment. Because this is addressing the root cause of cancer treatment failure. And so we are on track with that now, back and working.
It's going faster than ever?
It is going fast. You know, in the scientific projects, there is a saying, it takes longer time and it costs more. Than expected. And of course, this is because you go into unknown territory. No one has done that before. And therefore, you suddenly encounter a new challenge, which was not defined, and then you say, okay, we have to address that.
Fascinating. We're tight for time, and I would like to have some audience questions. So if you could keep your questions brief, please. We'll start over here. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's Michelle Mitchell. I'm the Chief Exec of Cancer Research UK, and I just wanted to thank you both for your incredible leadership. We have seen the importance of vaccines before with the HPV vaccine, and Peter Sassini at Queen Mary now published a report a few years ago which showed a 90% reduction in the rates of cervical cancer amongst the first young girls vaccinated, with the hope of the elimination of a cancer. So building on some incredible work in vaccines. Now my question is, where in the world do you believe is the best place to conduct clinical trials at the moment, and what has the UK got to learn from that?
The UK is actually a very good place to conduct clinical trials. I have to say, we have a partnership with the NHS, and we are delighted to work with them. So the UK might learn from other places, but they are themselves already at a good place. Spain is an excellent place to conduct clinical trials. Australia, for example, is an excellent place to conduct clinical trials. But there are also places where the bureaucracy is a hurdle. It takes too long to start even a clinical trial, and those places start when UK is already through with the clinical trial. So
wow, low bureaucracy
there's
UK.
a lot to learn.
Great, we have the next question, thanks.
Actually, my question was pretty similar. You moved part of your research to the UK. Is it because of the strict data regulation in Germany? Is the data regulation in Germany an impediment to further progress of your work?
Do you want to take?
I can take that. So we did not move our research to UK. We are becoming a global, a company with a global footprint, and one place where it is good to be because so much is going on also scientifically is the UK. So this is one of the reasons why we have an affiliate here. There is a lot which needs to be done in terms of data-related, protection-related laws at several places, also in Germany, and it's good that it's on the national sort of plan, of a master plan to find better ways to regulate.
Rather an opportunistic or silly question, just for personal use. So when I was my wife was being treated for cancer in Germany a few years ago, and we had to stay there. We took like the shots for COVID and so on. I just want to know, for how long do we need to keep taking those shots? That's like, what do you advise? Like, for how long should we keep on taking the vaccine, just as an advice?
The COVID vaccine or the cancer vaccine?
The COVID vaccine. Now, my wife still takes them because she's still under treatment, but I mean, for me, I want to know, because in Germany they say Auffrischung always, the doctor, you need to refresh it, so I just want to know for how long, and what's your opinion on that?
See, we are conflicted, because if we would advise you should take it every year, that could have different motivations. But the thing is, we have a wonderful separation of the task. So we, as drug developers, bring the innovation, bring the drug. Then we have the authorities who check whether the drug was approved, was developed in a right manner, and they authorize. And then we have the national committees which advise who should get the vaccine. And by division of this work, we can ensure that really the people who need the vaccine should get it every year. The current regulation in Germany, or for last year's regulation, is that elderly people and people with existing comorbidities should get vaccinated. So if this is true to your relative, it would make sense that he gets the vaccine every year.
I think we've run out of time, I'm afraid. I was told we had actually a really quick. Is it really quick? Yeah. Like. Yeah. Last one.
My name is Ed, and I have 5 times your jab in me, so thank you for that. There was a lot of critique as well on your product. How did it affect you personally? Were you kind of open to that critique, or did you?
You mean the misinformation?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
The misinformation about it. Yeah, exactly.
We dealt with that scientifically. At the end of the day, the personal involvement is every time when you hear something that someone is claiming certain damage. The first thing that we do is to check whether this might be true, even if it's very unlikely. So we go into our data, we check that, and we did that in the first place, and we are continuing to do that. And if this is okay, if we see the data do not support that, then we are fine. We of course understand the challenges of misinformation. So we are living in a time where everything which is important creates division in the population. So therefore we don't take it personally. Of course, we see the harm that is happening that people who should get the vaccine are not vaccinated, and then when they get COVID, then they have a higher likelihood for severe disease or to die. This is, of course, a challenge, and therefore we are trying to find solutions for communication, sharing our data, ensuring that we really provide a transparency that everyone can see, and independent scientists can talk about this. This is the only thing that we have in our hands.
Yeah, perhaps when it's something that's so important but also so hard to understand, that this could save our lives, something we can't see. So, yes, you can understand. Thank you so much. Please join me in showing your gratitude to Özlem and Uğur.